The first thing you need to understand about heartbreak is that there are two kinds of heartbreaks. There's healthy heartbreak and there's unhealthy heartbreak. Healthy heartbreak is when two people who have secure attachment styles separate from one another, because yes, it is possible for two people with secure attachment styles to consciously decide that they no longer want to be together. And it is perfectly normal for those people to experience emotional pain once they do separate. This is normal. This is natural. When you're in love with somebody and you separate with that person, it's difficult to move on. It's difficult to deal with that emotion. The difference between that and unhealthy heartbreak is that with unhealthy heartbreak, you're not just experiencing the emotion of loss in terms of that relationship. You're experiencing the emotional loss in terms of the loss of self. Because when you have the insecure attachment style, be it the avoidant or the anxious, in a sense, you are losing a part of yourself whenever you lose that person, because you're relying on that person to complete you. And the differences may seem subtle at first, but as time passes on, it will become acutely apparent which heartbreak you are experiencing. Because when you're experiencing healthy heartbreak, it gets better. It gets better over time. You're able to grow from it, you learn from it, and you move on and you apply those lessons in your next love situation, in your next relationship. Whereas with unhealthy heartbreak, you actually deteriorate as a person. You become worse off because, again, you've essentially lost a part of yourself. Your self-worth has decreased instead of increasing. That is how you know that you were in a toxic relationship or a toxic love affair, whatever you want to call it. Situationship. People have all these different names for it. It's all the same shit. If you become worse from losing this person, that was a toxic situation. Now, whether you're in a healthy heartbreak or an unhealthy heartbreak, regardless of which one you're experiencing, this video is going to help you overcome that once and for all so that you can finally get over that person. Well, it's kind of a lie because you can't actually get over somebody, but you can move on. Let me explain what I mean. So here's the thing. If you've ever truly been in love with somebody from the depths of your soul to the extent that you would actually consider giving your life for this person to ensure their well-being, you're never going to get over that person. Point blank, period. And I know it may sound like a limiting belief on the surface, but what I've come to realize over time through my own experiences and my observation of other people's experiences is that the reverse is true. This is actually the most empowering belief that there is, because once you accept the idea that you are never going to get over that person, you allow yourself to move on because you're no longer suppressing the feelings that you still feel for that person. You see, here is the harsh truth. That version of you who was in love with that person who is no longer in your life will always be in love with that person. So let's say, for example, if you're 20 years old watching this, you're not just 20 years old. You're 20 years old, you're 19 years old, you're 18 years old, 17, 16, 15, so on and so forth. You've experienced all of these different layers of being. And as you get older, you stack on those layers, which keep that in mind because it'll come back later on in this video. But if you're 20 years old right now watching this, and you were in love with this person at age 18 years old, and they are no longer in your life, you need to understand that that 18-year-old version of you, who is still within you, is still a part of your being, still a layer of your being, will always be in love with that person. Therefore, you're always going to have feelings for that person. And trying to get rid of the feelings is actually going to do much more harm than good. Because what will end up happening is that because you're suppressing the feelings, they will manifest themselves in unexpected and inconvenient ways. For example, they'll sabotage your future relationships because you'll realize in the back of your mind that you actually still have feelings for this person, and you may even confuse those feelings for that person with the desire to be with them, but they're not the same. You can have reverence for somebody while also acknowledging that that person no longer belongs in your life, no longer has a place in your life. They may have a place in your heart, but they don't have a place in your life anymore. It's a very important distinction to make. But the only way you can make that distinction is by acknowledging that you will always have feelings. That version of you will always have feelings. This is why they say time heals all wounds. Granted, that's not necessarily true because, again, if you are experiencing an unhealthy heartbreak, then time actually makes the wound worse rather than better. But when you understand that you're always going to have feelings for this person, and you give yourself permission to feel the way that you feel, with time, you will stack on these layers. So when you get to be 22, 23 years old, I can't tell you which layer it'll be, but when you get to be at a higher layer, you've, in a sense, buried that version of you far beneath where you currently are. And that doesn't mean you're suppressing that version of you. It just means that you are no longer that version of you. You're far removed from that version of you. And not only that, but that layer of your life is comparatively much, much smaller than it once was. Because 1 year of your life at the age of 20 is 1/20th of your life. 1 year of your life at the age of 50 is 1/50th of your life. Major, colossal difference. So that is why they say that time heals all wounds. But what do you do in that interim period where you are hurting every single day? Well, the first thing that you can do is you can channel your emotions. Channel your emotions. By now, I don't even think I need to tell you that you shouldn't repress your emotions because, again, they will show up, they will manifest themselves in inconvenient ways. So you can instead channel your emotions through one of a few areas or multiple or even all of these areas if that's what suits you. The first area is fitness. Go and start working out at the gym. A lot of times when you're experiencing heartbreak, that feeling is accompanied by a feeling of powerlessness. You feel like you have very little control over your life. Fitness is a great way to hijack control over your life because that is one thing that will always be in your control. You can't control other people within the context of a relationship, but you can control your fitness level. Another thing that you can do if you're an artistically inclined person is you can channel your emotions through your art. And you may surprise yourself. You might think you're not artistically inclined, but you might find that the emotion is exactly what you needed to unleash the artistry that was deep within your soul. For example, at the age of 19, when I was experiencing my own heartbreak for the first time, I found out that I love writing poetry. I never wrote a poem growing up. Until the age of 19, I didn't write any poetry at all. Now at the age of 24, I have 3 poetry books and enough material in my Google Drive to probably drop another 5 or 6 poetry books if I wanted to. All because of heartbreak. I was able to reach into an emotional space that I literally didn't know existed until I experienced those emotions. So it turned out to be one of the greatest gifts, one of the greatest assets in my life up to that point, and even since then. Another area where you can channel your emotions is work. You can take your emotions and you can use them as fuel to work harder, to go the extra mile. Now, this doesn't mean that you should use work to distract yourself from the feelings that you're feeling. I've been down that road, and trust me, it doesn't take you anywhere worth visiting. But when you can use the pain that you're experiencing, and this, by the way, doesn't just apply to heartbreak. This is any emotional pain that you've experienced. But when you can take that pain and turn it into purpose by helping other people who are going through something similar to what you're going through, you can not only find a lot of fulfillment and satisfaction in knowing that you are helping people overcome their pain, but you can also accelerate your own healing process because you're reinforcing these principles to yourself over and over and over again. And I truly believe that that is the reason why I was able to heal so fast from my devastating heartbreak at the age of 19, or I guess 20, however you want to look at it. Now, if none of that works for you, and truthfully, there will be times when none of that works for you, when no amount of work, no amount of writing poetry or painting, no amount of working out fixes the problem and you still feel that pain, the only option that you have at that point is to purge your emotions. In other words, cry. Let yourself cry. I understand that there is probably a lot of internal resistance to the idea of crying, or maybe there's not. Maybe you were raised in a healthy household where expressing your emotions in a controlled manner was encouraged. But for most men in this day and age, crying is heavily discouraged. It's penalized socially. And what you need to understand is that you don't need to be thinking about what other people think of you. You need to focus on how you're feeling right now. You can't keep carrying around this feeling forever, or I can promise you it's going to lead to a crash out. It's not to say that you're going to become a mass shooter or anything, but you're going to become a crash out because you're going to be operating as an emotional person instead of just allowing yourself to purge your emotions and acknowledge that they're there. And let me break the limiting belief regarding men crying right now for you. We know that as men, we are supposed to cry because we're able to do it. We have tear ducts. We have the emotional capacity to cry. We experience the emotions that correlate with crying. Therefore, crying is no different than any other natural bodily function. Saying that men shouldn't cry is no different than saying that men shouldn't pee, or men shouldn't yawn, or men shouldn't eat. We experience hunger, therefore we eat. We experience sadness, therefore we cry. There is nothing wrong with it. Rest assured that I am not telling you to do anything that I would not do myself. I wrote my poetry books, especially my first poetry book, after many, many nights, many days spent driving in my car, bawling my eyes out. Didn't care. I just knew that that's what needed to happen at that moment. And guess what? I always felt better afterwards. So when you can combine the purge and the channeling of your emotions into one act, you basically become unstoppable. Now, on a more practical note, aside from the emotional aspect of it, something else that you need to consider, not even consider, something else that you need to immediately implement, a rule that you need to implement right now if you're going through heartbreak. And I'm speaking directly to you with this one. You need to stop stalking her social media. Stop stalking her social media. Stop checking up on her. Stop justifying it to yourself, saying that, oh, I just want to make sure she's doing all right, or I want to see if she's with somebody else. Stop thinking about those things because you have to think about it. If you're having to stalk her social media in order to see what she's doing in life or how she's doing in life, that means she's not a part of your life. She's essentially disqualified herself from your life by ghosting you, by breaking up with you, by rejecting you, whatever occurred that made you watch this video up to this point. She has disqualified herself from your life. So she doesn't deserve your attention and your energy. She doesn't. Because what's the best thing that can happen from you looking at her social media? What is the best case scenario in that? You feel peace of mind? I mean, that's not going to happen. And we already know what the worst case scenario is. You see her with some other guy looking happy and living her best life. And that's definitely not going to help your healing process. So why are you doing that to yourself? Stop stalking her social media. Block her profiles, block her number, delete your social media accounts and lock in if that's what you need to do. But do not, for the love of God, look at her social media stuff. And if you see her looking at your social media, block her. Block her. Don't look back. Don't take that as an excuse to stalk her social media. Take it from me. I have been down that road. And again, it doesn't take you anywhere worth visiting. Now, the next thing you need to understand about healing from heartbreak is that success is the best revenge until it isn't. And what I mean by that is a lot of times as men, especially when we begin to channel our emotions into fitness, into work, or into our art, we think in terms of bossing up to make them regret having rejected us. And believe me when I tell you, there has never been a bigger culprit of this ideology on this planet than the person that you're looking at right now. I fully bought into this ideology. I ran up 100,000 subscribers and built a whole online business based on the desire to make one person in this world regret having rejected me. And when I would drive that brand new BMW, when I would sit in that luxurious apartment, when I would make those YouTube videos for thousands of people to see, I still felt empty inside. Why do you think that is? The reason why is because I was still living my life according to her. I was still allowing somebody to dominate my life. And the worst part was, this person wasn't even in my life. They couldn't even find the time or the bandwidth to provide me with an explanation as to why they acted the way that they acted, and yet I still chose to orchestrate my whole entire life based on what I thought would impress them or make them envious or jealous. It's dumb. It's dumb. It literally brings no fulfillment. The satisfaction that you think you're going to feel, it's not coming. I had that moment. I had the moment where I went to a restaurant, and I think I've talked about this on my channel, so I'm not going to go too deep into this, but I had a moment where I went into a restaurant, ironically, a restaurant that I put her onto, that I brought her to on one of our dates. And I came in the restaurant on my birthday, dressed to the nines with my Gucci belt. I pulled up in my Beamer, had on my nice clothes and everything. And she was working at this restaurant. That was supposed to be the moment where it all came full circle. I bossed up, and you're working at this restaurant that we once ate at. When I tell you that I have never asked for a to-go box that quickly in my whole entire life, I am not bullshitting you. I got my food. I maybe ate 2 bites. I got my to-go box because, after all, I did pay for it. And I got up out of there. I cleared the scene as if I had just committed a crime. And I didn't go back to that restaurant for almost a year, or maybe actually 2 years. I think almost 2 years before I went back to that restaurant. Because that's how much that interaction, we didn't even exchange any words, didn't make eye contact. That's how much being in the same space as her messed with me psychologically. Because through all of the propaganda that I had fed to myself, with the idea that I could become successful and make her envious of me, or even just impress her and make her like me. When I got in the same space as her, I couldn't even look her in the eye because I knew the truth deep down that I was still vying for her approval in one way or another. And just like with stalking somebody's social media, that does not have any upside. There's no upside, it's all downside. I guess you could say the upside is that you become successful, but what's the point of being successful if you're still miserable? And in fact, you're even more miserable because now you have the success and this person still doesn't like you. Or conversely, you become successful, then this person starts liking you, and now you realize that this person just likes you for what you have and the things that you've accomplished, but not who you are. Which is a terrible feeling as well. Haven't experienced that myself, but I can imagine that's a pretty shitty feeling. The point is, if you're going to become successful, do it for yourself. Do it for the people that you're going to help along the way. But don't do it for her. Don't do it as some form of payback, some convoluted way of making her realize what she missed out on, becoming the one who got away. These are ideas that I used to buy into, but now, after a few years of stacking those layers and being able to see my life from a higher vantage point, being able to observe that situation for what it was, I want a refund. I no longer want those principles. You can keep them. Matter of fact, I don't even need the money back. I don't need the time back because I'm helping you save the time that I can't get back. Focus on yourself. Focus on your healing journey. Take however long it needs to take, and it's not going to be a linear process. You're going to think you're good, and then you're going to wake up one day and be fucked up all over again. It's going to take time. But as long as you don't get in your own way, it won't take any longer than it needs to.
So that was just one out of 191 exclusive videos in my coaching program. If you want to unlock the rest of those videos and attend weekly coaching sessions with yours truly, then be sure to click the link in the description so that you can get your dream body, get your dream girlfriend, and make freedom your lifestyle.